You've probably seen this setup, an Alocasia in a glass vase with Leca at the bottom and moss packed around the roots. It's simple, it looks great, and some people say it's the perfect middle ground between soil and semi-hydroponics. But here's the thing. Moss is organic. It breaks down, it compacts, it holds a lot of moisture, and in a glass container, there's barely any airflow. So while it might look good now, I'm not yet convinced that it's sustainable in the long run. And that's what I'm here to test. I'm running a multi-month experiment comparing two setups. One is the trending glass vase method with Leca at the base and moist sphagnum moss around the roots. The other uses a ventilated plastic pot with Leca at the base and a mineral-based substrate, something similar to pon around the roots instead of moss. I'm using 4 plants in total, 1 Alocasia Nebula and 1 Alocasia flying squid in each setup. That way I can see how both species respond under the exact same conditions, same light, same nutrients, same temperature, same watering routine. The glass and moss method is definitely trending, but is it actually practical for the long haul, or are we setting ourselves up for soggy moss, algae buildup, and root issues? I'm not convinced it'll hold up over time, but I'm open to being proven wrong. By the end of this experiment, I might have to admit that I was wrong, or I might have to confirm what I suspected all along. Either way, I'll be sharing monthly updates, tracking root growth, leaf changes, algae, and maintenance, so we can see exactly how both setups perform over time. Let me walk you through exactly how I've set up both systems. This part really matters because if we want real results, the setup has to be fair, consistent, and replicable. Before we dive into the details, I want to give a big thank you to Uprooted for supplying the plants for this experiment. They arrived in perfect condition, healthy, well-rooted, and beautifully packaged. If you've ever had plants turn up damaged or wrapped in a kilometer of tape, you'll know how refreshing it is when everything just arrives smoothly. I've added a link to their store in the description if you want to check them out. I started by gently removing each plant from its nursery pot. Once they were out, I used my fingers to carefully tease away as much soil and organic matter as possible. Then I took the plants outside and used running water to rinse the roots thoroughly, making sure to flush out any bits of soil hiding in the crevices. Leftover organic matter can break down over time and cause problems in a Leca setup. While I was at it, I also rinsed the leaves to remove any dust or residue from transport, just to give the plants a fresh, clean start. After rinsing, I inspected the roots closely and trimmed away anything soft, mushy, or unhealthy using sterilized scissors. Finally, I compared the root systems side by side and made sure each pair had a similar root mass. I also noted how many leaves each plant had, so we're starting the experiment from a fair and even baseline. So for the first setup, I'm using a clear glass vase with a base layer of a thoroughly rinsed Leca. This acts as the reservoir, providing a consistent source of moisture from below. The Alocasia is placed on top, and I've gently packed dry sphagnum moss around the roots, not tightly, just enough to hold the plant in place. When I pour in the nutrient solution, the moss will expand as it absorbs moisture, helping to stabilize the roots without suffocating them. For the nutrient solution, I'm using a mix of Clonix Clone solution and Root Zone. I poured it into the vase until the water level sat just below the moss layer, not touching it directly, but close enough to maintain steady humidity and moisture. This method is visually appealing and gaining popularity, but as I said before, sphagnum moss is organic. It can break down and compact over time, and it retains a lot of water or moisture, conditions that may affect root health in the long term, and that's exactly what I'm keeping an eye on in this setup. For the second setup, I used a ventilated plastic nursery pot with the same Leca base layer as in the first setup. Instead of moss, I used a mineral-based substrate similar to pon. I got mine from Habit Plants, and I've linked that in the description. This type of substrate doesn't compact or break down over time, and it allows for airflow around the roots, which is especially important when growing Alocasia. I chose a ventilated pot here because mineral substrates tend to perform best when there's good air circulation. It's a setup that supports long-term root health and stability. Now, the two setups don't use the same type of container, and that's intentional. The glass vase in the first setup isn't necessarily ideal for moss, I think, but it's a style that's becoming really popular online. I'm not trying to modify or improve it. I want to test it the way people are actually using it. That's what this experiment is about, comparing two real-world setups and seeing how they hold up over time. Once the plants were in place and I filled the substrate around the roots, I placed the pots inside a cache pot with a nutrient solution at the bottom, just like in the vase setup. The water level sits just below the top layer, keeping the root zone evenly moist without direct contact. Both methods rely on a submerged watering approach, but the big difference is what's surrounding the roots and how those materials behave over time. All four plants are now growing inside a grow tent. That allows me to control the temperature, humidity, and light, so the only variable in this experiment is the growing setup, moss versus mineral. So now both systems are up and running. Each setup has one Nebula and one flying squid growing side by side under the same conditions in the grow tent. Everything else is identical. Same nutrients, same water, same temperature, same humidity. The only thing that's different is what's touching the roots. Moss in glass, mineral in plastic. Let's see what happens. Hello, good people. It's been 20 days since I put these alocasias through this method, and we're going to take a look and see what's happening. Not quite the 30-day mark, but there's been developments, and I didn't want to miss that by waiting for 30 days. So let me pull my table up and we will take a look. So the first thing to note, of course, is my plants are still alive. So for me, that's tick number one. I am winning. Let's start with the Alocasia nebulas, right? So these are my flying squids. They're still around, and these are the nebulas. Okay, so you can see that there's some things happening with my nebulas over here. So this nebula here is the one that has got the sphagnum moss on the top, and this is the one that's got the mineral substrate at the top. And immediately you can tell that we've had leaf retention, yes. So there's 3 leaves on here, and there's 3 leaves on the moss one. But the moss one, look at that leaf. That is not doing well at all. But to be fair, this leaf always looked a little bit sus to me. It looked really suspicious even when I put that in that. So I'm not surprised that it looks like this. I'm going to move closer so I can show you properly what they look like. So that leaf there is this is the mineral-based one. That leaf looks a bit funny, but what can you do? This leaf looks really good. This actually feels very, very firm. It's got a good texture to it, that one as well. So I've got 2 good leaves on this one, and let me bring these leaves closer. Look, this is not looking, so this is the sphagnum moss one. This is the biggest leaf there. That is pretty limp to me. That does not look good at all, and that's looking there, and that's the one that I showed you before. Now, look, it could very well be user error here. I'm not saying that this is because of the moss. It could just be that this plant was a bit sus to begin with. And of course, it had that leaf to begin with. So it could have been the plant. But then it could also have been me, because I don't really know how to use this method properly, and I'm just trying it for the first time. So there is that. But let's take a look at the root system and see what's happening there. So now, it's a bit hard to show you all this. Just looking at this front here, I don't see much going on in the root department. There's a bit of root there. I don't know if you can see that. There's not much happening, and that's the Leca at the bottom, and I've got my solution down there. So for this particular plant, honestly, there's not much going on with the moss. And in fact, if this was a competition, I would say this plant is losing. Now, let us bring this one. This is the plant with the habit mineral base there. And you can see that that water there is quite dusty because, of course, of that. But looking at that, oh, look at that. That right there is a new root. That is a new root that wasn't there at all. And when you look at this here, you can see there's a lot more root action going on here. So, and it's not surprising that this plant actually looks like this compared to this one where there isn't a lot of root action. So this is looking really, really good. Now we'll put that to the side and we'll do a brief overview of the flying squids. These are the flying squids. This is the one in Sphagnum moss with a Leca base. And this is the one with the habit mineral substrate. Now, I mean, like I said at first, they're both alive. A few of the tentacles have died, and I'll show you. So the first thing I wanted to show you actually about this plant that is in the Sphagnum moss is you can see over here that you've actually got some mold growing on that Sphagnum moss. And I'm thinking, well, that's definitely a user thing because that's just telling me that there isn't a lot of airflow at the top of that moss. So what I want to do is make sure that my fan is going around that to make sure that that mold doesn't settle. But you can see this, the tentacles of that squid. That one is gone. That one is also gone. That's 2, 3. You know, there's a fair bit lost there. But the ones that are there, quite firm. You know, this plant looks like it's doing good. It's actually doing a lot better than the Nebula that's in the Sphagnum moss. I can tell you that. Now, let's see what the roots are doing on this plant. Now, I can't see any root activity here just yet. There's nothing happening that we can see. So at month 1, we can't see any root activity on the flying squid. Now, this is the flying squid that is in the mineral base. And again, you can see that there's gone. So you do have some leaf loss there. I mean, I want to say leaves. I don't know. Are these leaves? I don't know. It's a bit of a weird plant, to be honest. But the ones that are left behind, nice and firm. I like that. Now, let's take a look and see what's happening with the root system. I mean, I can see a root over there, right? So that's good. I don't see anything else. That's the same root. That is the same root. I don't see anything else. And obviously there's nothing peeking at the bottom. That's that. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with how things are tracking at the moment. I'm a bit concerned about this plant over here. I'm not really going to do anything because obviously this is an experiment. I just want to see what's going to happen with this plant. But in terms of how I've been caring for these plants, so all 4 of them have been in my grow tent. And as luck would have it, the heater in my grow tent actually died. So it's been a little bit cold in my grow tent. And by the time I got a new one, which is only a few days ago, you know, a few days had passed. So, you know, what can you do? But I'm hoping that with the increased temperature in the grow tent, things will look up a little bit more. I guess what I could have done also is actually put a heat mat there, but no, that's too many variables. But I'm happy with how this has gone. I haven't flushed these plants yet. I don't think it's necessary at this point. Honestly, there's not much going on. What I am going to do is just change over the nutrient solution here. I'll just pour it out and put some fresh nutrient solution, and that's how far I'll go. I'll put them back exactly where they were, and I'll come back again at month 2 and we'll check them out and see how they're going. It's been 2.5 months since I first transferred my plants from soil to Leca, and let's take a look at how they're going. The first thing to report is that these plants are still alive. These are my flying squids. It's always a good thing when you're conducting an experiment and you've actually got something to report back on. So my plants are still alive. I'm really, really happy with that. Let's do a little deep dive. This is my flying squid that I put in with the mineral blend at the top and the pond at the bottom. You can see that plant is still alive. It's looking really good. The leaves are looking fabulous. And that's the one that's got the moss on top as well. And just looking just an overall glance, you can see that the one in the moss seems to have more tentacles than the one that's not in the moss. I could be wrong here, but it looks like it does. So far, it looks like the moss combo might be winning. This is very anecdotal at this point, very, very anecdotal. And this is the one that's in the moss, with the moss at the top and the Leca at the bottom. This is my Alocasia Nebula. And one of the reasons I wanted to actually report on this experiment a lot earlier than I had intended is I wanted for you to see this. I didn't want to miss this. You can see that leaf there is pretty much dying. And this is the one that's in the mineral blend. So in order for you to get a very deep appreciation of what's gone on here, you need to look at the all-important root system and take a closer look at the leaves. I'm gonna come closer and show you my plants. We'll start with the flying squid that's living in the mineral blend at the top, and that is the Leca at the bottom. Never mind my crappy label. That's not really doing anything right now. So you can see that, let me start with the leaves. Those leaves are looking beautiful. I mean, I call them leaves. I like to call them tentacles. Look at that tentacle over there. There's a lovely green at the tip there. Same with this one, a lovely, lovely green at the tip. Same with the other longer one. So I'm really quite happy with how this plant is going in terms of how the leaves have gone. And you can see, oh, hang on, I say you can see, maybe you can't see. There's one right there in the middle, right there, coming up. So this plant is doing really well. Now, the most important thing I want to take a look at is the roots. And I'm just looking at this plant, looking around, and to be honest, I can't see any roots that are coming off the bottom of that. Nothing, I can't see any roots there. So yeah, I mean, it's probably still pretty much early days for this plant, but the fact that the leaves are still looking quite good, there's been a lot of leaf loss. I mean, it was to be expected with the flying squid. These things are quite delicate. So with that transfer, things were bound to happen. But I love the fact that I've got these left. And when I tug at the plant like that, it's quite firm. I'm really, I mean, obviously I'm not using all my strength, but I'm, tugging at it with quite a substantial amount of force, but nothing moves. So that's telling me that that's well rooted in that pot. Well rooted. Now let's take a look at the plant that's living in the moss and Leca at the bottom. So that's my plant there. And you see what I meant when I said I think this plant is winning right now? There seem to be more tentacles, as I like to call them. And you can see they look really, really healthy, just like the other one. You've got the greens there. So, I've still got my flying squid alive. And this one here, that seems to be a new one. So things are happening. Let's take a look at the moss. I'm actually quite impressed with the way this moss looks. I thought that there would be more growth on the top, lots of fungi, furry stuff there, but there isn't. And I thought there would be a lot more algae on there, which surprisingly there isn't. So I'm really happy with how this has come so far. Let's take a look at the roots. So at the bottom, there's nothing to talk about. And in the sides, there really isn't anything there. So like the other plant, it's not surprising that there isn't much root action going on in this particular pot. It's still early days, and I just give that the all-important tug test. I literally just made that up. And that plant is not moving. So it is well rooted in there. And I think things are going very, very well. So it's just a matter of time. We'll just keep an eye on this. And of course, I came into this experiment wanting to see how the moss is going to hold up. As I said before, I'm really quite impressed with how things have stood. But the one thing that I will say that I have noticed a difference is that I do have a fungus gnats now. And that's something that I got rid of when I started growing my plants in semi-hydroponics, but they are now back. And I know for sure, and I dare anyone to tell me otherwise, it must be the sphagnum moss. That's the only thing that I have done differently and this is in my grow tent. These plants are living in my grow tent, so they're a lot more sheltered than all the other plants. So I really do think it's the sphagnum moss. I don't know. If you don't think it is, please convince me in the comments below. that's that. This is the glass jar experiment that everybody is loving at the moment. And I know a lot of people grow plants in glass jars very successfully. Fortunately, unfortunately, whatever that may be, I am not one of those people, but I'm trying it out. So here we go. This is the one that's living with the mineral blend at the top and the Leca at the bottom. And so far, we've got leaf number 1. That was an original leaf. That's there. See, I can actually see a fungus gnat flying around right now. And then I've got this one, leaf number 2, looking really good. And leaf number 3, looking very sus. Now, this is the one that's living in the moss setup. You can see this leaf over there is toast. And this is the other leaf there, just looking not very happy. And this leaf actually unfurled in my home. And when I got this plant, this plant did look a bit sus. I mean, I can't deny that. And it's nothing to do with uprooted, to be honest. Plants came from uprooted. They were beautiful. But of course, uprooted is in far north Queensland. The plants were living in a lovely greenhouse. It was warm. It was awesome. They came into my home in Melbourne. It's freezing. And I picked the worst time to do an alocasia experiment, honestly. But, I wanted to get it done. So there, I wouldn't let something as mundane as temperature stop me. But anywho, there we are. I'll come closer and I'll show you what that looks like. So that's that leaf that unfurled. That looks very, very, unhealthy. And that's the older leaf. That's also looking very sus. And that's the moss there. So with this moss, you can actually see a little bit of algae growing there, which is interesting how I didn't have algae growing in the other one. But, some things happen for a reason. Who knows? I don't know. So you can see that's the level at which the nutrient solution sits well away from the moss. But what's interesting with this one is there is no roots, absolutely no roots that are coming through there. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Now, take a look at the plant that's living in the mineral blend. Look at those roots. Look, I am so not making that up. Look at how amazing that is. That root going into that reservoir down there. It just looks beautiful, beautiful. And these are the leaves of that plant. They look really, really amazing. So I don't know. And it looks like there's something happening here as well. So I know it's still very early days and I had no intention of actually publishing this video this early on, but I think, it's probably worth, bringing to your attention so you can know what I'm doing and see what the preliminary results are like. And so what are my learnings? It's a bit hard to say. It's very, very hard to say. It's still very, very much early days. I don't think you can make any conclusions. The only thing I can say, I think, and this is just completely based on my biased opinion, is if I was going to grow something in a glass vase, I would probably use the mineral blend Leca combo because this plant is doing so well. It's doing so well, and those roots just look beautiful. Whereas this one, it's still early days. It's still trying to find its feet. So in terms of getting things going, I would definitely use that when you're talking about the Nebula. The flying squid, look, to be honest, I would think that maybe flying squid, maybe not the best plant to use to figure out whether leaf retention and so on is the best thing to do, but it's the only alocasias I had to hand. So there we go. It still gives us a lot of information. What it does tell me is that this works. It definitely works. And I think that was never in disrepute. That was never in doubt. And yeah, I think it probably takes a lot longer for those roots to come through. And it is a bit wider as well. So not surprising. Would I do the mineral blend for the flying squid as well? I think I would. And one of the only reasons for this particular plant is the appearance of the fungus gnats. The fungus gnats are killing me here and I don't like it at all. It's probably one of the few reasons I would have for now. But of course, the whole point of this experiment is to see how this fares long term. So it's all very well and lovely now so is this one. But the moss is organic and it is going to start breaking down. And when that happens, that's what I really want to find out. So I will continue with this experiment and I will give you updates as we go along into the months. So the good thing is we're coming into spring and we're going into summer, and these plants are really going to take off at that point, and it'll then be easy for us to look and see what is happening with them long term. If you want to see another Alocasia experiment, watch this next video. I'll see you there.